Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is aircraft woman Kaylee Wallace. Today we commemorate the 105th anniversary of the Third Battle of Gaza. After withdrawing from the Gallipoli campaign, the Egyptian Expeditionary Force, initially raised to guard Egypt and the Suez Canal, grew into a large reserve force providing reinforcements for the Western Front. Motivated by Britain's major objectives of maintaining maritime supremacy in the Mediterranean and protecting Egypt, India and the Persian Gulf, the Egyptian Expeditionary Force moved into the Sinai Peninsula. With victories at Romani, Magdaba and Rafah, they had recaptured substantial Egyptian territory. Attacks on the coastal city of Gaza, the heart of the main Turkish defensive position in southern Palestine, however, failed in both March and April 1917. Both sides adopted a defensive posture and a stalemate developed. In order to break this stalemate, the Third Battle of Gaza began as a feint. British and Dominion forces bombarded the garrison for 6 days, and 3 divisions were deployed to fool the Turks into believing that another frontal attack was imminent. The real effort was made at Beersheba, a fortified town on the eastern end of the Turkish defensive line. The attack was launched at dawn on the 31st of October, but by late afternoon, the British 20 Corps had made little headway. That afternoon, the Australian Light Horse was used as cavalry for the first time, in a battle remembered as the last great cavalry charge. The 4th Light Horse Regiment dismounted at the trenches and took its objective on foot. Many in the 12th Light Horse Regiment, however, jumped the trenches and galloped straight through to take the town, holding their bayonets like swords. Private Walter Keddy of the 12th Light Horse Regiment recalled, "We were all at the gallop, yelling like mad. Some had bayonets in their hands, others their rifle. Then it was a full-stretch gallop at the trenches. The last 200 yards or so was good going, and those on horses put on pace and next were jumping the trenches with the Turks underneath. When over the trenches, we went straight for the town." Because of the shock value and sheer speed of the charge, Beersheba was taken, opening the way for the Turkish defensive line to be outflanked and rolled up almost as quickly. After severe fighting, Turkish forces abandoned Gaza on the night of the 6th of November and began to withdraw into Palestine. Advancing forces found the town abandoned the next morning. Today we remember the Third Battle of Gaza. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. This evening we warmly welcome Wing Commander Chris Howard, retired, representing the Air Force Association. And as always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of St Joseph's Primary School from Adelong, New South Wales. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh let us rejoice, for we are
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. It would also be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read just one story from the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant James Hamilton Ayliffe. James Ayliffe was born in January 1891 at Pernamuda Station near Broken Hill. Known as Jim, he was the eldest of 10 children born to sawmill manager Frank Ayliffe and his wife Elizabeth. He received his education at St Peter's College in Adelaide, where he was a member of the senior cadets. On completion of his education, Jim gained employment as an overseer and bushman on Yankanya Station in the northwest of New South Wales. When war broke out in August of 1914, Jim Ayliffe did not hesitate to enlist, joining the Australian Imperial Force on the 19th of August 1914. He was assigned to B Squadron of the newly formed 3rd Australian Light Horse Regiment. He was assigned the rank of trooper and began a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service from Adelaide on the 22nd of October 1914, travelling on board the troop ship Port Lincoln. Ayliffe's unit arrived in Egypt in mid-December that year, joining the 1st and 2nd Light Horse Regiments. The men continued training until May 1915, when they were deployed to the Gallipoli Peninsula without their horses. There, his unit joined the New Zealand and Australian Division and began assisting in the defence of the tenuously held Anzac front line. Throughout the deadly August offensive, Ayliffe's unit remained in reserve before returning to Egypt December following the evacuation of the peninsula. Soon after, Ayliffe was promoted to Lance Corporal ahead of his unit joining the Anzac Mounted Division in the new year. In the early months of 1916, Ayliffe and his comrades were deployed to the Nile Valley to defend it from bands of pro-Turkish Senussi Arabs. By May of 1916, Ayliffe's unit had joined the forces defending the Suez Canal. In August, following his promotion to corporal, Ayliffe took his part in his first major battle of the war at Romani. With the enemy on the run, Ayliffe's unit joined the Allied advance across the Sinai Desert in November, ending with another clash against Turkish forces near the Palestine border at Magdabar in December. Ayliffe's unit boldly attacked the most northwestern redoubt despite orders to withdraw. Capturing the redoubt at bayonet point within moments of their advance, Magdabar fell later that day. After the capture of Magdabar, the Turkish outpost of Rafah became the focus of Allied attempts to break through to Palestine. On the 9th of January 1917, members of the Desert Column, including Ayliffe's unit, attacked enemy positions surrounding Rafah before dawn. Ayliffe was hit in the arm by fire from an enemy redoubt and was badly wounded. After Turkish defences collapsed, Ayliffe was evacuated to Cairo for treatment in hospital. He rejoined his unit in Palestine in late February, as Allied units were preparing to take the city of Gaza, where the Turks had developed another stronghold. In March, the first attempt to take the city failed when the attack was called off on the cusp of victory. Afterwards, the enemy extended and improved its defences, making further attacks on the city even more dangerous. Despite this, Ayliffe's unit was sent into attack during the second attempt in April, which resulted in days of bloody fighting with no significant ground gained. The months that followed were spent undertaking reconnaissance tasks in preparation for a third attack on the city. Turkish forces had developed a series of strong posts from Gaza on the west coast through to the city of Beersheba in the east. As earlier attempts to take Gaza head-on had failed, it was decided that the best way to break the enemy line was to outflank them by Beersheba. In October, an attack on Gaza was feigned to draw enemy resources into the city, with the Turks expecting another direct attack. To the east, the 4th Australian Light Horse made a frontal cavalry charge on Beersheba, as the other mounted units attacked the city on its right flank. Beersheba fell on the 31st of October, allowing mounted units to outflank the Turkish line and begin closing in on Gaza. A week later, on the 7th of November 1917, Allied forces made several simultaneous attacks on enemy positions, with an aim to break through that day. Ayliffe's unit was advancing ahead of British forces towards Tel el-Sheria, hoping to trap the enemy when he was hit in the stomach by enemy rifle fire. Falling from his horse, he was attended to by a medical orderly, but his wounds proved fatal and he died within hours. Later that day, the city of Gaza fell, allowing the Allies to push further into Palestine. Sergeant Ayliffe was buried near where he fell. Today, his remains lie in Beersheba War Cemetery, beneath the inscription chosen by his parents: "The heart of honour, the soul of truth." James Ayliffe was 27 years old. His name is listed on the roll of honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant James Hamilton Ayliffe, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please be upstanding for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.